Hello everyone, this is a podcast called Chatting in Cars, and I'm Charlotte, and I sit here and I waffle on about crap, essentially, for roughly 30 minutes on my way home. It is a podcast where I swear a lot, and I talk about random topics, so if I've started on one topic, I tend to run into other topics, so obviously it's going to mix into other conversations, and there might be something that you don't want to hear. Obviously, if you don't want to hear that kind of thing, you feel like it might be too bad for you or too rough for you to discuss or think about, or it might trigger some horrible emotions that you're not ready to deal with, I suggest absolutely turning it over. But if you're feeling brave or you just got nothing else to do, absolutely keep it playing. That won't cause any more problems. This is my second podcast of the day. The topic for this podcast is grieving. So I've been through a few circumstances in my life where I've had to grieve. Yes, I have experience in this. I've ranged from all kinds of reasons to grieve. Luckily, I'm not predisposed to be a depressive type, which is a blessing in itself, but some people really have to deal with some horrible experiences and they just sit and wallow in grief. One of the best examples of extreme grieving I can think of was Queen Victoria. If you ever learnt about that history side of things, she went into public grieving for the majority of her life, where she wore black and she rarely was seen in public. She just didn't want to do anything to do with anything. Whether it's a case of actual grieving or just political grieving, or the fact that she was doing a job she didn't want to do alone, there was lots of reasons she might have decided to just go full hermit mode as much as she can. I don't know, but everybody deals with it differently. She spent the majority of her life black clad and trying to get away from people, but that could just be introversion or some subtle hint at gothism, I don't know. Maybe she was the forerunner, the original goth, Queen Vicky. Who knew? It's about the right time period. Everybody's different. We all deal with grief in different ways. Some people handle it better than others. I've got autism, so I don't really go into depth about grief so much, unless it's one of those few emotions that I have an absolutely firm grip on. And I know in other podcasts I've talked about how I don't have a variety of understanding of emotions, but the ones I do know, I go into deep feelings about, because they're so much more valuable, because there's so fewer of them. So when I feel bad, I feel bad. But when I, feel things like love and stuff like that, it's absolutely intense, bordering on obsession, It's never a case of, oh, I like that. Were it a different disorder, if I didn't have structural components to my brain telling me these things, you might be confusing it with BPD or OCD, or, there's a variety of things you could call it. The tricky part is when I grieve, I don't do it in the immediate. It's never a case of, someone dies, for example. That's a pretty obvious example of grief. Someone dies and then, it's instant crying and stuff like that. It's not, it takes me a while to register what the fuck's just happened. And of course, mixed in with like a trauma background where, your parents have conditioned you to cut off emotions like grief, strangely also happiness, but, they encourage you to just not feel so you can get on with your job or put up with the shit that they put you through and things like that. Then, trying to feel your feels is pretty fucking hard. I mean, my mum gave us the toxic masculine version of emotional vulnerability. She raised us as men, all three of us girls. I have two sisters and a brother. The girls were raised differently from the boy because we were given the toughen up princess approach to it. You have no right to cry. This is not as bad as you think it is. It's constant invalidation. Just get on with it, and get on with it because you have to and you will, and I expect more of you. My brother, because he was ADHD, he had less expectation on him because you couldn't get the fucker to sit down, let alone do the right thing. Not that he was incredibly bad. He had his own way of doing things. He was going to do it anyway. He was non-compliant, and, as a result, he received physical correction, shall we say, from my mum, more than we did. The girls were more compliant, and we were more ready to follow orders, basically. So the good news is that it jogs you on. The bad news is that it cuts you off from feeling things. I already have a predisposition for autism, so I have trouble identifying emotions as it is, or I had. Given removal from, I removed myself from my parents at around 20 because I just didn't want to hang around them basically, and I slowly sort of distanced myself from them, setting up boundaries and things like that. And it's been in and out of associating with them for years. At this point I avoid them because I know every time I go down there it's toxic as fuck to their house. And it's a constant invalidation of emotions and events that occurred, and you just sit there and think, why do I bother associating with you fuckers? I don't know. But, my emotions I've had to develop and feel free enough to develop. And that came with age and interacting with people who are more on the level than my parents ever were. They were completely emotionally unavailable. Completely. And they were left with 4 small children. So it's a case of what the fuck are these people doing around as kids? That's what I think of as an adult, because I'm a teacher. And I'm sitting there going, why are these emotionally unavailable assholes allowed to not only be around children, but also raise them? Because there's no support, there's no emotional support. We're like little objects to manipulate. There was nothing was celebrated. If we cried, we were told to stop crying, you get smacked again. And it was never just a smack, it was a smack and a grab at whatever I can find to hit you with. They didn't like noise, whether it was happy noise or angry, sad noise, they just didn't like noise. So you had to be silent. So when you're getting hit, you had to be silent. Don't make direct eye contact, look down, don't answer back, don't make a move, just take the hit. That was us basically absorbing their emotional unavailability, and the only emotions they seemed to emit was anger or being ignored. So I do remember being ignored a lot. But, as an autistic person, it was really all right because I was in my own little world most of the time anyway. And as soon as they started kicking off, not that I'm saying it's all right to treat your kids like that, but, you live and you survive in those conditions. You don't see anything else as normal. So when people start prodding you to show emotions and things like that, you're like, what the fuck do you want? And why are you coming near me? See, that I've been told that's a trauma response, to be thinking that way. It's like, don't touch me, don't come near me sort of thing. When I was in my 20s, I was so unused to people wanting to interact with me in a positive way that I would definitely just shy away from people. I didn't like hanging out with people at all. I don't feel comfortable doing it now, but I know it's part of life and I have to, in my mom's words, harden the fuck up and get on with it. But yeah, it's still tricky and troublesome. And I've just done a podcast on social anxiety, so you can imagine the kinds of things that people go through and have to put up with just to get to the stage what everyone else thinks is just a normal interaction. It's like a screaming inferno of what the fuck is happening kind of thing, mixed with why do I have to be here and what the fuck's going to happen next. And that's just on the inside of your skin. So you can imagine what your facial expressions are doing. But it's crazy. So when my granddad died, for example, 2018, I had my granddad Bob die on Valentine's Day. I was not attached to this man. He was a dirty old man, and it was not a good relationship. He caused hell and riot between my parents, which then got passed down to us. So he was always posed as this villain of the story, and if he died, then we'd all be better off, which is weird. It was partly true. Things got easier. My dad was less stressed. My mum was therefore less stressed. But by then we'd all moved out, so it didn't really fucking matter. 2018, so Bob died on Valentine's Day. And then my nanny, which was his ex-wife, died around about his birthday, around about May 5th. Or, around that area. So it was a couple of months between them. So I had 2 deaths in a year. In that same time, I was separated from my husband for that, that forced, you have to separate for a year before you can actually file for divorce kind of shit that the government does. Because you need more time to think about it, apparently. It's like, oh, no, I don't. So I was also homeless at the time. And that was my dark night of the soul year, where everything was falling apart. My businesses failed. I just collapsed them because I couldn't keep running them. My uni, I was signed up to a doctorate I just dropped it because I just couldn't keep it going, and I was in debt. So I was trying to work that off. Credit card debt, which is a fucking nightmare. Compounded interest is the worst. So I was trying to get rid of that as well. So this was my depression year, the Great Depression, if I can put a name to it. Well, that's what my psych said. She said you're getting divorced and it's causing your depression. It's like, oh really? What about everything else? No, that's why you can't sleep and why you're crying. So I was grieving while I was also trying to work and deal with every other fucking thing that was going on. I had a delayed response, and because I couldn't register my emotions, I couldn't figure out why I was grieving. I knew I felt bad. I couldn't identify, I couldn't put a name to the feeling. And I still can't really, I'm not good with that. Which is terrible for anyone who's with me, I suppose, because if you just say, oh, I feel good, or I just feel bad, it's really vague, and they don't have a gauge on what you're feeling. Which is why maybe, when I'm happy, I let my stims out now. I just bounce. I'm just like, I'm really happy. I'm going to show you I'm physically happy. Which is why I come across as a real dork. When I'm bouncing around on the treadmill high as fuck on pre-workout. Is that fucking ass piece back again? It's like, yeah! Let's go play. I love the gym. I do love the gym. Which is, again, one of the black and white things. I can't do grey areas. I can't say, oh, I'm just moderately pleased. It's like, if I'm pleased, I'm fucking happy about it, dude. Let me show you how happy I am about this. I'm happy, and I'm giving you presents, and I'm covering you in kisses and all kinds of hugs and things and like that. Which is, some people would find suffocating, I think, maybe. But they've got those more moderate ways of dealing with things. They can contain things better. I don't have so much a spectrum of emotions as much as them. It's not as varied. There's really no grey areas. If I'm happy, I'm super fucking happy, and I'll show you. If I'm angry with you, like like my ex-boyfriend's been finding out for the year after I left him, yeah, you'll know. I'm not happy. I won't go near him, but given the circumstances I had to leave on, I was not happy, and in a horrible way. I let it out on Facebook a bit, but I'm a bit pathetic that way. But it was venting. It was me trying to vent the pain he'd caused, mixed with trying to heal, trying to understand what was going on. And I didn't miss him because I was still angry with him and stuff like that. So I must have alienated some people on Facebook at least, right? So that crazy bitch is back. She's venting. I mean, it wasn't like me getting angry and directly saying, you're a fucking piece of shit. It was more like, what do typical girls do? They find quotes. I don't know, it's lame. But I was trying to use them to try and, because I'm a visual learner as well, so I need the visual to understand what's going on. If I can make connections that way, then I would understand what's going on. If I got some context and, sort of like a stage to understand the events, Participants acting, I go, this did this because of this, and I go, all right, so that's why. I've reached a few conclusions with my exes, which has helped me heal a lot faster. In relation to the events, I still can't understand the MO, the modus operandi, of why the fuck they would do that, except that it's a them thing. It's like, I can't see inside their head. I can't understand things coming from my side of the fence. What would have caused that? It must be them, right? I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't mind being wrong. I'm not the best of people when it comes to noticing subtleties as well, so maybe I missed something there. I don't know. But grieving-wise, with both my grandparents dying within months of each other and all that other shit going on, I didn't recognize that I was depressed. I had to have someone tell me, recognize my symptoms and say, you're depressed, you've got depression. And it was a psych, and you've got these other things going on with you as well. I was like, oh, thanks for that. Didn't know that. I thought I was a bit anxious, but it turns out it's a whole load of other fucking things. But then it's a great help to know that once you've identified it, you can see what the symptoms of it are, and you can mediate them. You can actually work around them, use them maybe to your advantage if you want. For example, I like that I've been given a good diagnosis of being autistic, because then I can relate to my kids, and we've got shared things we can talk about and difficulties in the learning experience. And you say, oh yeah, I went through that as well. It's okay. If I've got selective mute kids, I can talk about all right, I was just the same as that age. It's quite normal. You can grow out of it. You can work with it. I'll show you what I did, and this has helped me, and maybe it will help you. And it's a great experience because you can actually relate to the kids better. That's just because I work as a teacher. If I was working with adults, I'd still be trying to help them as well. That's just the nice thing to do, right? You do the nice thing. I mean, some people don't want the advice and some people don't want the interaction. Some people can't handle the fact that I might have been diagnosed as autistic. It's like, my mum still thinks I'm quirky. It's like, you're not autistic, you're quirky. You got a psychologist telling me I've got these symptoms there, and the other stuff. Could you not maybe accept that it might be possible? It's like, no, you're just quirky. I think, to be honest, she might see it as a failing in herself. It's nothing that's controllable. It's genetic, as far as we know. Faulty genes, or not, because nothing that I would deem as my autistic traits actually are bad. I've got no real problems with anything. Or if it was bad to start with, then it's very overcomable with socialization. You learn to develop the social skills and things like that to work amongst people having these already established undertones. It's not a problem. You just work with it. You work around it. You find ways to deal with it. People see it as a disability. I don't see it as a disability at all. It's helped me. I've got staying power when it comes to getting tasks done. My OCD helps me get things right. Fixated interests means that the detail will be there and the effort will be there. There's a lot of helpful things. I've got a thing about time where I have to be on time and I'm never late. I'm usually the first one there, to be honest, because I like being early, and it's just good manners, to be honest. I think that one. There's a lot of things that people go, oh, you got autism, and you're like, oh, they're shit. It's like, no, actually, it just means I have particular ways of doing things that are seemingly more effective than most average people. But that's a whole podcast in itself. I can talk about that for hours. It's one of those new novelties that I'm interested in. So I wouldn't mind doing a podcast about that. But grieving as an autistic person. I didn't register that I would be sad at the start. Bearing in mind I wasn't really particularly attached to my grandparents because one was an asshole and the other had spent most of their life in Norfolk, England. So I didn't really get the right bearing. I was already alienated from them. But it's still the death of a person, and it's still a bad thing. It still feels like a bad thing. Even if they were like suffering and in pain and stuff like that, having someone removed, and I don't deal with change that well, having them change from, existing to non-existing, if that's right, the way to look at it. They do exist, they just exist on the other side, and they're poking you from the side, making sure you don't fuck up and embarrass them. This is not our DNA. Our DNA doesn't do this, you little shit. Come on. But it was hard to understand what was going on. I couldn't tell if I was grieving because of all the other shit going on around, or because of these two people dying, or the circumstances were very stressful at the time, or if I was just tired. A lot of the time I think I was just tired, to be honest, because it's a hell of a weight to be carrying. For someone who's not really used to carrying that kind of heaviness, and to be doing it alone because, everyone fucked off. The only person I had really was my brother. My parents knew but didn't bother getting in contact. I don't know if they were trying to give me my space, but, the lack of concern showed. Not that I actively go looking for a concern, but the lack of concern honestly mimicked my childhood. So I'm like, I'm used to this, but you're still an asshole. I'm used to this, but I shouldn't have to be. So I grieved alone. And it was interesting because while it feels like hell while you're doing it, you build yourself back up faster, I think, and stronger, because you can set parameters. You're not codependent on someone else's sort of support of you, emotional support of you. Some people thrive with others standing around them, making them, feeling sorry for them and stuff like that. I'm not used to it. I don't do the victim thing. So when I was grieving, I was happier to be isolated and working on my own, trying to get through this shit. Even when I was living at home in my teenage years, in my 20s, with my parents, if they came near me, and this was only towards the late of my teens, the late teens, when I was just about to move out, did things like my dad's offer to start doing things like the dishes while I was cooking. I'm like, no, just fuck off. And I swear that was weaponized incompetence, because he hadn't offered up until my late teens, and suddenly I was just getting shit done and I wasn't even thinking of, asking for help or anything like that. And then suddenly he decides he wants to be a helpful dad, essentially. By then I was just so fucking fed up of it. I don't want to know you, just get out my fucking hair. Not that I was able to or allowed to actively say those kind of things, because you get your ass kicked still. My mum was very active up until I left, quite frankly. And we were still living in fear and treading on eggshells because my dad's a berserker. My mum's a berserker, but we're used to that berserker. When my dad kicks off, it's like, fuck, he's going to do something. Yeah, both unhinged. If you listen to the podcast about berserkers, I did right at the start, I think it was like the second one I did, you'd understand the kind of shit we had to live with as kids. But I work better in isolation. I just feel better working on my own. And that's why I have trouble asking for help. So when I rocked up to my doctor's office crying my fucking eyes out because I just separated from my ex-husband, I couldn't stop crying, and I felt incredibly embarrassed to be crying in front of anyone, because I had my mum in the back of my head saying, stop fucking crying. Stop fucking crying. Nobody cries. And to a lesser extent, maybe Tom Hanks saying there's no crying in baseball. I don't know. He's a lovely man. Why would he say that? But, my mum didn't allow us to cry. We weren't allowed to grieve. It was a case of stoicism done wrong, because you never got to feel those emotions. You always denied them, you internalized them. And then, just like my dad did, you get to about 40, mid-40, and you have a nervous fucking breakdown and take it out on everyone around you, because that's exactly what he fucking did. There was a big thing, like when my first granddad died. My first granddad was Fred. He died when I was about 12, maybe 15. I can't remember. His wife, my grandma, who was the Irish Catholic gypsy woman, she died when I was about 8. And my parents' response was, don't let the kids see you crying. And that didn't make sense to me, because everybody grieves. Everybody cries when you grieve. It doesn't make sense. So even they denied their emotions in front of us. It's like you have to, what was the phrase? You have to stay strong for your family. I'm sitting there going, there is a strength in crying, you fucking idiots. Being able to show yourself to be vulnerable, and to still know that if anyone starts anything, you still don't beat the shit up, and tears in your eyes, but you're not like wailing on, right? I'll still kick your ass. I'll cry while I do it, but I'll kick your ass. There is that toughness that was sort of inbred into us, or should I say beaten into us, or you don't show emotion. And for me, it's a worrying thought, because if either one of my parents dies, I don't know if I'll be able to grieve for them, and it's a weird thought. It's hard to build a connection with people that don't want to be emotionally available, who don't want to encourage it in any kind of way as an adult, because, it's seen as a weakness. It's a weird weakness. If anything, one of the strongest things you can do is try and relate to someone emotionally, because there's that vulnerability. You might get hurt doing it. Which is one of the things I like about myself. No matter how many times these fuckwits sort of, break your heart, break up with you and cheat on you and all that shit, I'm still willing to go, balls in to a relationship, from the start. I'm terrible that way, though. I'm terrible. I got my friends in there going, you need to hold back a bit. I'm like, no, we're going in. Whee! Sort of kamikaze into these relationships, and it's not very well thought out. And I'm all about the romance, and it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be lovely, and it turns out they're narcissistic piece of shit that cheats on you, and you're like, fuck, I did not see that coming. So I'm my own problem. I get in my own way. But I want the dream, and I've discussed this before. We all want that fantasy sort of, you've got male Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, love fest kind of thing going on, don't we? And we want to believe that it's real and it's not just fiction, because art is based on humanity, right? These are meant to be real things. But we hope to get it one day, obviously. So we hold out hope. That's the best thing. The Pandora's box of cruelty. Hope. But grieving's a nightmare, especially if you're autistic. I have trouble. I mean, they tried to give me medication for it. I'm natural. I don't like medication if I can. It's weird. I would rather do conditional behavioral treatment. because I've got a degree in it anyway, so I might as well lean that way anyway, right? I just don't think you should medicate someone up to their eyeballs. I think it would be better to feel bad than to be feeling nothing. I don't like the numbness that goes with it. And I've looked at some documentaries on TikToks where they interview people that have taken antidepressants. Because my older sister, my mum and my dad have all simultaneously been on antidepressants. So I don't know if that's a genetic thing as well, but I just didn't seem to register that I had depression. I honestly thought, oh, this is a bad experience. The crying is appropriate. Let's just cry. I didn't realize that maybe it might have been as serious as I thought it would be. It seemed to have gone away though, so I'm quite happy with that. But I didn't want to medicate. I'm sitting there going, everyone's saying just take the tablets and get on with your life. I'm sitting there going, but that doesn't fix the problem, and I didn't watch myself heal. I didn't identify what the problem was. I didn't go into any kind of introverted introspection about where this was stemming from and why it hurt and why I felt so betrayed. And it does send you, going into hermit mode does send you into a very big, you go and look inside yourself, as, hallmark as it sounds and pretty gay. But I can say that, I'm bi. Nobody's going to tell me off, and definitely not the PC police. Just ragging on myself. But, you get to go inside yourself, start poking around and figuring out why you're feeling this way. Why would your body react this way? Why is your brain sitting there going, this is too much to bear, I have to cry? And obviously, you're releasing stress hormones every time you cry. So what is the stress that you're crying about? And most people just sort of wipe their eyes, and 10 minutes later they've had a good cry, they feel a bit better, and they don't bother going back to looking at the problem and what was causing it. They just sort of, put on a new layer of makeup and keep walking. Actually, I could say if you're a woman, but men do it too now. I've been watching the K-pop people. I don't know what's going on there, but I'm assuming it's like face paint. So, okay. See, autism is fun. We're learning all the time. Lifelong learning. That's what I learned in uni. We're always lifelong learning. But it helps if you can just stop. And I was forced to stop. Everything dropped. I had no choice in that whatsoever. I was isolated from friends, family, the man I absolutely lived and breathed for, who I heavily depended on for my identity. If you listen to the podcast episodes I did about the value of silence or the value of being alone, both of those go into depth about how useful it is to just be left on your own. It was invaluable because you get to know yourself more. You're not using someone else's judgments of you to base your identity and what you should be doing and who you are and why you're associating with these people. And there's a lot of projection a lot of people do, where they tell you who you are because you're doing this, you are this person, and therefore you have to do this and you have to associate with these people, and if you don't, then you're nothing. And it's good to go down to the bottom of the bottom and find out that nothing is not anything but just a starting point. I completely reformulated myself from nothing. One of those Mexican proverbs, I love those Mexican proverbs. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. And it's true. You cut away the rootstock, you burn everything. In Australia, we have plants where they can only be germinated by bushfires. That's pretty much all the eucalypts, all the gum trees. You need a brush fire to get that shit moving because the seed pods and everything are just way too thick and rough and coarse. It's the bushfires that cause the next growth stage, which is the repopulation of the tree bases. And I learnt that from Mr. Rogers in geography class, and it's one of the few facts I remember from year 12 geography class. Thank you, Mr. Rogers, I love you. He was a good guy, he's from Edinburgh. Good teacher, I don't know why the fuck he came to our school. But yeah, it's the best thing I can think of. It's like sometimes you need that fire. It's an absolute baptism of fire to get all the crap and crud off you, in order to show you what you should be doing and what's holding you back, because it's usually the things that are holding you back get burnt away. If you've got a dependency on someone, I was codependent on my ex-husband for sure, emotionally. That came from my parents not giving me anything emotionally, a whole bucket of what the fuck going on there, which basically sums up as my parents set me up for a fall. where I would become almost undeniably attached to someone in a codependent way. It was almost unavoidable. There's no other alternative that was taught to me. They told me this is what you do, this is how it is, and this is how you'll cope. They didn't say this person's going to be a piece of shit, avoid them. They said you're going to be stuck in this situation, here's how to cope with it, or this is what's going to be normal, which is a nightmare in itself, because I don't think we're teaching people how to identify problems before they arise. We're just telling them how to band-aid them at the end. That's crazy. We should be able to give them out warning signals and shit like that. But at the same time, it helped me because it completely ripped out all that I was and gave me a new sense of where I was going and what I was doing. Sorry, I just did something completely illegal there. I'm not saying what I did either, but it was behind a moped. I hate mopeds. But yeah. Oh shit. Fucking two-stroke. Anyway, no. But it gives you a heads up in what you should be doing and where you can go, and it levels out absolutely everything, because nothing's holding you back. If you've got nothing, you've left with nothing, then that's good. There's nothing holding you back. You can completely reformulate what you want to be and what you want to do and where you want to go. Most of the time when I was married, I had no real choice in what I wanted to do, because I was constantly following him around and seeking validation from him, and if he didn't want to do it, then we didn't do it. It was a nightmare in that sense, because I didn't really get to do what I wanted to do with my life. Everything was held back by, say, financial constraints, or worrying what he would think about it, treading on eggshells. Would he give me shit for it? Would he criticize what I did? It wasn't fun. And here you are sitting on ground zero, basically, as a single person after all the aftermath. Everything's blown over. You're starting with nothing, but you've got the gift of knowing what you'll need, or knowing what's coming if you follow that path, so you're not going to take that path again. You'll know what you'll need to rebuild, because you've probably done it before, to be honest, but not recognize that you've done it already. You would have just done it, maybe learning as you go. I've rebuilt myself quite a few times now. And it's a great experience, because you go, okay, that didn't work, we'll try something else. But that's the thing as well, the hard part is acknowledging it's not working. When you're willing to cut it off, cut your losses before it gets real fucking serious. That's not to say I'm encouraging people to just run away from responsibilities and things like that, but to know when something's toxic and to be able to identify it is one of the tricky things. And there is obviously an element of grief in that. I grieved the future I had hoped for with my ex-husband. I grieved who I was when I was with him, because I was giving absolutely all and everything. He was my everything. I lost myself in that relationship completely. I loved him to death, honestly. And in the end, it was a metaphorical death that got me, because whatever I was that he made me to be, I died. Not the first time. Thank you, suicide at 17. But, everything I was had just gone. Oh, they dropped their ladder. Sorry, you just passed by and they dropped the ladder. I know, I got squirrel mentality. But, yeah, it's and you die and you get rehashed, and you can rebirth yourself into whatever you want it to be. And with the knowledge that this path leads here, do I want to do that again? No. Is that in the past and it didn't serve me, so I'm going to stop and recharge and try something else. The hard part is being willing to let go and acknowledge that maybe you weren't right about making a few decisions. That's our ego speaking. To admit that you were wrong. Some people would rather not admit they're wrong and just keep plowing away at a dead field. There's no nutrients in that field. What kind of seeds are you trying to grow? It's okay. There's nutrients at some point. No, it's dead. It's ash. There's silt there. There's nothing to grow here. There's no seeds. The seeds are dead. It's like, why do we keep plowing? We're just wasting our time. It's a weird metaphor. I don't know where that one came from. The universe, I guess. Anyway. But, you got to know when to cut your losses. And sometimes the losses are huge and sometimes the losses are small. My life absolutely collapsed. I had nothing to stand on. I didn't even have a roof over my head when it collapsed. I had people dropping dead businesses collapsing. I felt like I had my own little Armageddon on the way. I'm going, what the fuck is happening? And of course I'm ASD, so I don't know what the fuck's going on half the time. The shit's just happening. I'm going, this feels more confusing than normal, if normal exists. And you do it alone. And you realize how strong you can be and how fast you can rebuild after it happens again. Because when I left my ex-boyfriend, which was after my divorce, obviously, I rebuilt like a motherfucker. I was like nanotech in there. I just went... I wasn't in debt. I didn't have a lot of funds though, because we were spending my money on getting pissed and takeaway and shit like that, because that's what he wanted to do. I spent a lot of my savings just trying to make him happy, to be honest. But that regained, momentum when I separated myself from him and started, working on things I would normally have done on my own, to be honest. When I went back to my old habits. Things I knew that would work. I stopped trying to please people. And it is still residual from people pleasing as a child up to my late teens, because my parents raised me to be a people pleaser. Which, in the right context, is okay. It is a good thing to be a nice person. Oh, hello, person. Sorry, one of my neighbours is just wandering around my car park. It's nice to be nice. And it should be one of those things where you can just be nice to someone and they're not going to fuck you over. But, sometimes we find ourselves with these horrible people that take advantage of you for no fucking reason. And it just doesn't make sense. And they take advantage of you because they can. Because you let them. And it's a two-way streak. We're not entirely innocent when we're enabling them to be assholes. But you want to be a nice person, don't you? But, it's something to get over. You do grieve in those circumstances, but it's quicker to rebuild because you've got things that work and you can fall back on. You know that it's not going to be forever, because I tell you what, the grieving I felt from my ex-husband was nothing compared to what I got from my ex-boyfriend. I grieved my ex-boyfriend in the relationship, particularly the last 6 months of the relationship, because it was non-stop crying. Like every now and again, he'd be nice, and then he'd do something that was horrible, and you're like, this is why we broke up the last time, why are you doing this again? And it was just ridiculous. So there was no real stability in that relationship ever, because it was a lot of trauma bonding and a lot of circumstances with a smattering of niceness mixed with a lot of what the fuck. Whereas my divorce came crazy. It was crazy because I had 16 years of seemingly stability. I didn't think either of us would break up or leave or anything. I was shocked when it came about. I honestly thought I'd die with that person. I thought I'd grow old and just die with this person. It was really strange. It came completely out of left field. So the grief was more intense. It was harder. But you do rebuild, and I suppose it goes away, I guess. I'm still dealing with a few issues more related to the why of it than ever missing the person or wanting them back, sort of thing. You're sitting there going, but I don't understand the circumstances. Now that could be actually a trauma reaction. It could be ASD, because I'm still trying to figure out why this would happen. It doesn't, configure with the, the format I was told would happen. This isn't following the rules. I don't understand. What the fuck? Does not compute. But at the same time, it's a weird mix. And you've got to take a holistic approach to it. You're never going to get it the same as someone else grieves. Some people, they're done and dusted within a year of their marriage. They're just like, fuck this, I'm out. And maybe they've grieved in the marriage, or maybe they've grieved the person before they've died, or the grieved loss of their home or their businesses or something like that. They've already done it knowing that it was coming and it was inevitable. Maybe they've just handled it better that way. The hardest grief is when it comes out of nowhere. Like if your husband suddenly dies and you're like, fuck, okay, I did not anticipate this at all. But that's the hardest ones, the spontaneous reasons, because you're not ready for it, you don't see it coming. So if you ever know someone who's had spontaneous shit done to them, I would feel more sympathy for them. Definitely empathy as well, having been there. Yeah, anyway. If you are going through grief, absolutely, I suggest seeking out people who will support you if you're that way inclined. If not, then I hope you can use the isolation like I did to your betterment, to your constructive. Don't just wallow in the sadness. wallowing in the sadness isn't going to heal it. It'll just make it worse. It'll compound it. You'll sink. Just like in Neverending Story with Artax. Oh my God. What a movie for our generation. We learnt grief before we even hit puberty. When the horse drowns in the mud swamp and it's like, no, I love horses. But it was meant to be, you know, like a metaphorical boy dealing with the deep sadness of depression and grief and all this kind of things because the darkness was taking over and all this kind of things. It's an amazing movie. Even now I still watch it with the kids at work and stuff like that, and they still get sad about things like that. They hate the turtle. Fucking Marla. That's a creepy turtle. So I know. We all thought that at the time too. Why is it so fucking big? Why is it sneezing on people? Ew. But you know, it's helpful. Some people just deal with it and they can move on, step over it, and keep going. If you're going through grief, I honestly hope that you can find a way to, you know, rebuild yourself. Here's a chance to rebuild yourself. If you've lost someone, then here's your chance to celebrate who they were, and find a way to keep them in your life a little bit longer, maybe if you need to, or you can absolutely release them and let them go and say, this is the next cycle, this is the next stage, dealing what it's like without them. Same with losing your job on a lesser extent, I think. But that's because I find, you know, love and relationships so fucking personal and deep. They are absolutely blood-based as far as I can see. I lose a job, I don't give a fuck what is going on. If I lose money, I don't give a fuck. But when it comes to people, particularly romantic people that I'm involved with, that shit's in the bones. That's blood deep, that stuff. For me, that's blood in, blood out. So I take things very fucking personal when people fuck me around that way. It's not a case of, oh, it's okay, I'll just find someone else. It's like, no, I have to hunt you down. It's a weird arrangement, I know. Word to the wise, don't cheat on me. It's not going to end well. But no, I do take it intensely personally. And some people can just go, oh, he was just an asshole, and get over it. I don't know who these people are. That's the thing as well, because when I'm in a relationship, I'm in the relationship. I am absolutely in 100%, you know. It's not a case of, oh, we'll wait and see. Don't wait and see. We are here. Let's do it now. Go. Yes, I'm weird that way. Anyway, I hope you guys have a fantastic Monday. I'm going to do another 2 podcasts on Thursday, hopefully, if I remember, if I have the energy. And I'm hoping you are dealing with any grief, maybe, or if you know someone who's dealing with grief, that you maybe provide a safe environment for them to discuss it, or even just do something nice for them, okay? It's not a nice experience. Everybody goes through it. At the very least, if they're, you know, physically inclined, maybe you could hug them. Some people aren't. I'm selectively physically inclined, so I will only let my siblings hug me and small children. Grown-ups give me a shit. I'm hoping you have a fantastic Monday, and I'll see you guys on Thursday.
Night, death, darkness, not being there, is an essential component of being. You don't have the one without the other, just as your buzzsaw has no teeth without having that. That's the way being is.